I'm Fish and Chips and Vinegar on Tumblr, or if you know me from AO3 as the Lord of La Mancha, or if you know me in real life as Amanda, and I hear that you want to record a podfic. So you're probably here because of Les Mis Podfic Week, that's the reason that I'm making this, but if you're just making another podfic too, that's great, the world needs so much more podfic. So I hope before we've gotten here, you've gone over and you've taken a look at the first part, which is so you want to record a podfic. This goes over, with a lot of Les Mis jokes, how to set up to record, and I hope that you've bought a microphone, and it goes over some tips for actually recording in a space. It also gives you instructions on how to download the program I'm going to show you how to use in this video, which is Audacity. There's also some little extra software pieces you need to download if you want to work with MP3s, which is lame, or if you want to work with WAV files, which is FFmpeg. So we're going to start here. This is going to be Audacity 101. So this is going to be real basic, just how to record into Audacity and do some really basic editing. We're not going to add any sounds. We're not going to add any music at the beginning. This is just going to be, I want to hear my voice and I want it to sound good. So the 4 things we're going to go over, there's going to be 4 sections. The first part's going to be how to read to make editing easier. The next part is going to be how to actually record into Audacity or import into Audacity if you were recording on a different device. How to do some basic noise removal, and then how to edit in Audacity. Alright, so for the first part, we're going to go over how to read in order to make editing easier. So I hope that you know how to read. If you are here, I imagine that you do. But there's definitely a way that you can read in order to make editing later easier. So we're going to go over that in 6 steps here. So the first part is you're going to want to make a noise plate. I'm going to explain what that is in a minute. We're going to talk about leaving space to cut when you're reading. We're going to talk about doing your intro. That's very important, so we know what we're listening to. We're going to go over what to do if you make a mistake, which will probably happen. It even happens to me on a regular basis. What to do with page breaks, how to make those stand out. And then we're going to go over how to do your outro. So in order to talk about these things, I've gone and I've recorded a little bit of something. I've recorded a little bit of a lovely hug prompt that my son Freckle has written on Tumblr. So we're going to use that just to go over what that's going to look like. So we're going to jump into Audacity here. When you open Audacity, this is sort of what it looks like if you've recorded something. There's this lovely waveform here. So if I scroll back over to the beginning here, you're going to see there's a lot of empty space right at the beginning here, and then you have your waveform that kicks in here. This is what a waveform is. So a waveform just has some peaks where you're loud and some troughs where you're quiet, and when there's nothing, no speaking, you just have this flat line here that you're sort of seeing. The reason that it's all kind of like wavily and bumpy is because you have the background sound, but we're going to do some noise removal later in order to get rid of that. So the first thing that we're going to do when we go to record is we're going to do a noise plate. A noise plate is something that's going to let us do that noise removal later. So all that is just you've left a few seconds of silence at the beginning before you've started to say anything and just absorbed all of that background sound. So that's why you've got this big empty space right at the beginning here. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to start reading. And the first thing you're going to do is your intro. So this is the intro that I've done here. And it's important when you're reading, though, to leave space. So that's going to allow you to do your edits and mess around with it a little bit when you actually go to do your edits. So we've left some space here right at the beginning after my noise plate. I've read my introduction, which is this first part here, but I know it's my introduction because I've left a big space here before I've started to actually read the little bit of the hug prompt. So if I play it back, you can sort of hear what I said for my introduction. You're listening to A Leaping Hug with Corfair by my son Freckle on Tumblr. This podfic is read by Fish and Chips and Vinegar on Tumblr. Right, and I've left that space to know, alright, when I start reading here, Corfair has excellent peripheral vision. I've actually started reading the fic. So that's one of the important things about leaving space, is if I need to put any cuts in here, if I need to make any changes, I want that space. The same thing applies later on when we go and I've read a little bit more. So you'll see a big space here. Usually for me that means that I've made a mistake. You can see there's a little bit of a short little waveform there and then a big space. It's usually me saying something creative because I've made a mistake. So we'll listen back to that so you can see the mistake and how I've left the space. Corfair has excellent peripheral vision. He needs it. When he's driving, he has a Nope. So I couldn't quite get through the word strip there, even though it sounds like I was able to say it. It got stuck in my mouth as I was reading and I wanted to go back and read the sentence again. But what I've done here is I've left this space. So when later on we go and we do that editing, we're going to cut out that little flub that I did there. That space is going to leave me lots of room in order to cut that part out without getting in the way of any of my other parts there. So we've talked about the intro there. You basically, in your intro, want to talk about the title of the fic, who wrote it, and who is reading it. If you want to say a little bit, if you're doing for Les Mis Podfic Week, you could say something about that too. I probably will. But those are the main things you want to have in your intro there, so we know that you're reading it, and we know what it is that you're reading. We also talked a little bit already about what to do if you make a mistake, but we'll go over that again. So when you're reading out loud, if per chance you make a mistake or you get stuck on something, don't worry. You don't have to pause the whole thing. You don't have to start again. It's actually better if you don't pause. But you're going to do what you saw I did here. So where there's that long space, I just paused for a minute and then I kept going. So I'll show you what I mean here. When he's driving, he has a When he's driving, he has a strict no distractions policy. So I made a mistake, I flubbed up, I paused, and then I just started the sentence again and kept reading. If you're in the middle of a sentence, you probably want to go back to the start, even if you are around where a comma was. But if by doing this, it'll be really easy to just cut out the mistake that you made here, and then just jump right back into where things got good again. Sometimes you're going to have to read it a few times over and over again, and sometimes it's easy to cut out because you can see that all of these will be really short, and then you get your one really long sentence. But other times you might just have to do it section by section, cutting it out. So if you make a mistake, don't worry, just pause, go back to the start of the sentence and try it again. If you're really getting stuck, a tip that I like to do is stop reading the sentence that you're stuck at, go back to the beginning of the paragraph and read it again. Sometimes getting the flow going from the sentences you already had will help you get through that one sentence when you get stuck later. I also find that helps a lot when you get to a sentence that's not in English and you've had to pause for a minute and go find out, actually, how do you pronounce that or say that in another language? And you come back and you're sort of stumbling through it. If you read the section that comes before and then go right into the other language, sometimes that gives you a little bit more of a flow. So that's what you're going to do if you make a mistake, and just keep going all the way through the fic until you get right to the end. The exception would be if you're going to do page breaks. So if your fic is long enough that it's got page breaks in it, then I didn't have one in this one because I was just recording a little bit. But what I like to do is pause, do a couple claps, and say page break nice and loud. So what that's going to do is it's going to make a really big spike in your waveform. When you clap, it's a loud sound. It'll make the spike go up really high. So it'll show you where the page break is. It'll let you know, okay, I need to leave a little bit more space here. We'll cut out those sounds that we made when we're doing editing, but it's going to leave a little bit more space for me to put in a sound effect if you choose that you want to do that with the more advanced audio editing. Or if you just want to leave a space before you go into the next section, it'll let you know to do that. The other thing I'll do at page breaks is take a break, drink some water, do some stretching, sort of be a little bit moving around because you'll get stiff after you sit here for a while reading. So that's another opportunity for page breaks. You can just keep letting it record, and if you do go for a really long time and want to give another couple claps so you get another spike and you know that section is just you taking a break, that's a tip for you. You can do that as well. You can just let the microphone go and then keep reading when you're ready to jump back into it. Alright, so we've done noise plate, we've done leaving space to cut, we talked about the intro, what to do if we make a mistake, page breaks, and then you have your outro. Your outro is really similar to your intro. It usually is just going to go right at the end after you finished recording. I kind of threw a little one on in here. There's a little bit of a space here, and then I've done my outro there at the end. I made a mistake in here somewhere, so I re-recorded it a couple times there. So that's why it's nice and long. And then I've just left some space at the end in case I need to edit out any space. So make sure before you hit pause, or pause before you hit stop from your recording, you leave yourself a little bit of space here so you have some room to play. We can always cut out if you have too much. All right, so that in your outro, I should mention, there's a few things you probably want to mention. It's going to be sort of a repeat of the beginning, just like when you write an essay. So you're going to have what the person just listened to. Usually I go, this has been a hug prompt with Corfair by my son Freckle, and this podfic was read by the Lord of La Mancha. That's usually what I say when I'm recording for AO3. In this case, it was fish and chips and vinegar because I was going the Tumblr route. So you want what the person just read, or you want what the fic just was that they listened to, who wrote it, and who read it, just like in the introduction. The other thing I like to add is sometimes a little bit of a blurb. I usually like to give a reminder to go leave kudos and comments for the author on Archive of Our Own. So a lot of time you download a podfic, you leave Archive of Our Own, and you don't remember to go back. So it's a really nice reminder when they finish to say, hey, did you really like this? Go tell the author that you liked it on Archive of Our Own. I usually phrase it as, I can't even think of how I was going to phrase it now. If you really like this fic, don't forget to leave kudos and comments for the author on Archive of Our Own. I also will sometimes put in here, because I would normally say this was read by the Lord of La Mancha, I'll put in a little drop to what my Tumblr username is as well, in case anybody wants to talk to me there. And I usually just end it with a little thanks for listening, or any other way that you think you'd like to end it, just to give it a little bit of finality. So that's how I do the outro. Alright, so... That's Audition. I was using that to record my sound since I'm using Audacity to show you how to use the program. All right, so that covers how to read. We're going to go into the next section, which is going to be how to do the actual recording. So here we're just going to cover two things. It's going to be real basic. How to import audio into Audacity in case you were doing that lovely reading we just talked about. Into a different device. So you might not be able to record straight into Audacity depending on what kind of microphone you're using. You might have to record into an audio recorder or into your phone if you don't have that option of recording straight into Audacity. So we're going to talk about how to import that if that's what we're doing. Or for the other part, we're going to just talk about how to record straight into Audacity if you do have a USB microphone or one that goes into the microphone jack on your computer and you can record straight into Audacity. So we're going to jump back into Audacity, but we're going to look this time at what it looks like when you just open it. When you open it, it looks like this. It's very plain, very simple. It's a little bit intimidating because it is very blank and not a lot of instructions. So a couple things to look at before we start recording. You want to watch out for here. So if you want to do a test record and just keep your eye on here, there's a magic peak space between -12 here and -0. That's sort of the volume that you want to be at when you're recording. So if you have a microphone where you can change the gain, you can mess around with the gain a little bit there just to see if you can get it to fall in between those two numbers there while you're reading something. Or you might just have to speak a little bit more loudly if you just have a standard microphone. But that's sort of the peak space that you want to be in so that you're loud enough when you do finish editing your podfic and you're exporting it. Doing some of the noise removal will help a little bit with that, but you kind of want to be in that space already in order to help you out. The other thing to watch is this bar right here across the top. So automatically by default, Audacity will pick, unless you've changed them before, will pick the speakers on your computer and the microphone on your computer as the default. We don't want that because the microphone on our computer is terrible, so we want to make sure that Audacity is picking up the device that we want to record with. So in this case, it's a USB audio device. I have a Blue Yeti that I love very much, and so it shows up as a USB audio device for here. So this Realtek one right here, it might say something different depending on the devices that you have in your computer. That's your computer speakers and your computer microphone. So we don't want that. We want to make sure we have selected the USB audio device or whatever name shows up for the device that you've plugged in to record with. So I make sure that's selected. On the other side, you have your speakers. So this is how it's going to play back to you later. So you could just leave this on your computer speakers because that's just the speakers that you want to output from. But in my case, I have a Yeti, so I can plug the headphones into my Yeti and hear myself record with my headphones on. So I have that set to USB audio device to make sure that the feedback is running through my microphone and to my headphones instead of out to my computer. And the same thing goes back when I'm doing that playback in Audacity. I can hear it through my headphones through the Yeti as well. If I want to change it, I want to hear it from my computer, I just go back and I change it to the speakers on my computer. Alright, so as soon as we are ready to go, we're going to start with how to import into Audacity. So if you've edited it in something else and you've copied it, you've saved it to your computer somewhere, we want to bring it into here so we can edit. So in order to do that, we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Open, just like you would if you were opening something in Word, and you'd go and you find the file on your computer. So most of my files are hidden in a folder with Podfic. That'll work. No, that was Audacity. Try to find something. To the will of the people, there'll be something in here. So Which Boy was the first one that I did. And so I've got lots of audio files in here. I recorded this on my recorder before I knew how to do it into Audacity. So I would just open these files here, double click on them, and that'll open into Audacity if I wait a second. So I recorded them as MP3s onto my recorder because that's the file format that it did it in. So I had to make sure that in Audacity I had that lame encoder downloaded and installed in order to be able to open and edit with these. So if things aren't working, make sure you've got that encoder installed. Same thing goes for waves. If waves aren't working, make sure you've got FFmpeg installed. The instructions for that are back in that first post I did with installing Audacity. Alright, so then it just opens like this. You'll see that it shows you the entire thing, which is quite long for this section. It's about 10 minutes, it shows at the top here. But we want to zoom in a little bit more so we can do some editing. So in order to do that, you've got your controls just at the top here on the right, and you've got your zoom in and your zoom out. So you're just going to press on that a few times to zoom in, and then you notice we can see that more closely. So just like before, I had my noise plate right here at the top, and then I've got my recordings here, and you can see the spaces in between where I've made mistakes or I've paused and I need to edit those out. Alright, so that's what you're going to do if you are importing something in, but I'm going to close that by clicking the little X just here. I'm going to show you how to record something into Audacity. So in order to do that, you have a record button right here, and you have your stop button, and then you have your play and your play pause. So before, if you notice, I was playing things back, but I wasn't hitting the play button in the corner. What I was doing there was I was hitting the space bar. The space bar on Audacity will play, and if you hit it again, it will stop. So that's just the shortcut that I was using there to play back from my keyboard here. It just makes it a little faster than having to reach into the corner all the time. So when we're ready to record, we're going to hit the record button here, and I'm going to do a noise plate, and then you're going to hear me talk again. So if I hit record, all right, you're listening to, I should pause because I didn't start right. You're listening to Audacity 101, as performed by the Lord of La Mancha. Alright, so that'll probably do when I'm ready to finish recording. I'm just going to hit stop, and it will stop recording there. You can also leave this in the background. So if I hit record again here, it's going to start recording in a second track. That's right, but I don't want to record over what I've just said, so I'm going to stop that. If I go and I move the playhead, so that's the part that plays back, and click at the end here, so the head is at the end. When I hit record, it's going to start in a new track from there again. There we go. So now I'm not overlapping that audio. You can also, though, have it running in the background while you go and you read something else. So I can go and I can open, so you want to record a podfic, I can do my little bit of reading here and then jump back into Audacity, and it's still going and I can hit stop. So that's something else you can do while you record. You don't have to have it open like on your phone or something in front of you. You can have whatever you're reading open in your browser, and then you can come back into Audacity when you're done reading. You need to pause, you need to look at anything, you can do that. Right, so that's pretty basic. That's straight up how it is. Make sure, though, when you're done editing it, that you save it. So as you, quickly with the multiple tracks. Ideally, you want to record it all in one go. That would be really easy. You only have one track you have to worry about. But if for whatever reason you do have to stop, you have to walk away for a really long time, you don't want to leave it running, and you come back, you can still keep recording into the same file. The only thing is, every time you start doing a new recording, Audacity is going to make a new track. That's okay. We can still edit with that, but what you want to do is when you're doing your editing later, make sure that you've actually selected everything, and you might have to go down and reselect things in the new track and do it a second time, that noise removal process, just to make sure that you've actually done the whole fic, because when you select it, it won't automatically select things that are in a different track. So something to keep in mind if you do end up having to do split tracks like this, just make sure that you do edit all of your tracks and not just the first one. But when you're done editing, you gotta make sure we save it. So we're gonna go to File, Save Project As. So what this is gonna do is it's gonna save it as an Audacity project file instead of saving it as an MP3 or a WAV or any of the normal files. That's okay. We want to save it as an Audacity project because we're gonna go in and edit it, and then we're going to do export as it says here when we are done doing all of our editing. So I'm gonna hit OK. I don't want to save it in the Witchboy folder. I want to save it on my desktop. And I'm going to call it tutorial for Audacity 101. And I hit enter to save, and there we go. We've saved our file here. So that's pretty much how to record into Audacity. It's pretty straightforward. If you're having any issues, you can message me on Tumblr, but you should be able to do that without too many problems. The next section that we're going to cover then is how to do that noise removal I was talking about. So there's a few things we're going to cover here. We're going to use that noise plate to get a noise print. So that's why that noise plate we did at the beginning was really important. We're going to run the noise removal effect. And then we're going to talk about things to watch out for. So like the split track audio where you had multiple tracks, we're going to make sure that we're doing that on all of our tracks. And we're going to talk about the dreaded underwater sound. So to begin, I'm going to go back into Audacity. And I think I did noise plate here. Yes, I did. So we can use this track here that I had recorded when we were talking. All right, so here's my noise plate here right at the beginning. So what we're going to do is make sure we are on the selection tool, which is the top one right here, and not on none of these other ones. We're not going to worry about these. We're not doing anything fancy. We're not doing any layers. So really the selection tool is the only one that we're going to need. We're going to go and we're going to click the playhead where we want to start. You're going to get a little hand here, and you're going to click and hold, and then drag to where you want to stop. So just grab a little random section of your noise plate here. Any section will do. And that's just going to grab your background sound. If you do stop recording for a very long time and then come back later and record again, I would do a noise plate again at the beginning just because the background sound may have changed since the last time you were recording. And we want to make sure we're editing that new sound out as well and not using the old noise plate for our new recording. So anytime you have to leave for a very, very long time, make sure you do a new noise plate. If you're just stretching for a couple minutes, you probably don't need to do a new noise plate before you start the next section. So we go ahead and we selected part of our noise plate. We're going to go to Effect up here at the top. We're going to go to Noise Removal. These are helpfully in alphabetical order, so we're looking for the one that starts with N, Noise Removal. And we're going to click at the top here where it says Get Noise Profile. That's going to take a sample of that section that we just highlighted from our noise plate, and that's what we want. We want it to select all of those background sounds we want it to take out. So we're going to hit Get Noise Profile. Shouldn't take too long. There we go. I've copied it. And then we can click to deselect that. So now we want to remove this noise from all the rest of it. So what we're going to do is double click, and that should highlight the entire track. So as you see here, you don't see this track selected. We're going to have to go and do that track separately. But here it's selected all of this track. If it hasn't, you can just click this and click and hold, and it'll extend. Right here, you see the little hand show up. You click and hold, that'll extend it to where you want that noise selection to end. But just double clicking should select your entire track. So once we got the track selected, we're going to go back to Effect again. And don't click Repeat Noise Removal because that took our capture, our noise print. But we want to do the actual noise removal this time. So we don't want to click that. We want to go back to Noise Removal. And instead of hitting Noise Profile, we're going to use Step 2. So you want to make sure that this is on Remove, not Isolate, but it should do that by default. But the rest of this, it's going to decide some random numbers there based on whatever was in your noise profile. So you don't have to worry about that too much. It should do that on its own. So everything looks good. You're just going to hit OK. If you want, you can hit a preview just to see what it sounds like before you do it. But you probably can just hit Control-Z to undo it since we're just doing the whole thing. And we can hit OK. There we go. So I had a really short clip there, so it didn't take too long. But as you can see, all that fuzziness is gone from this line. And if we play it back, that's right, but I don't want to record. We just have that second track. You can't hear anything anymore in this track here, although you might have heard what was underneath it there. Let's play it from here. Yeah, so there's nothing in that sound anymore. But when we hear our voice, all right, you're listening to, I should pause because I didn't start right. We don't have any of that background sound in before. So if I hit Control-Z, you can hear what it sounded like before. All right, you're listening to, I should pause because I didn't start right. It might be hard to hear, but the biggest place that you're actually, edit, redo noise removal, redo noise removal. The big place you're actually going to notice it is in those spaces in the middle where you've done your breathing, your pausing. That's where you're really going to notice the absence of that sound that you had going in the background, and that's where it's going to make the biggest difference. So with our second tracks, if you have multiple tracks because you've had to pause, make sure that you go and you double click them, you go into Effect, you hit Noise Removal, and you do the same thing again so that you noise remove from those tracks as well. And we've got a third one here, all the way down here. Double click, Effect, Noise Removal, okay. And that'll remove the noise from this track as well. So once you've done all of your noise removal in each of your tracks, you're ready to start editing. So before we go any farther, we're going to hit Save Project. We don't have to hit Save Project As because we've already saved it once. And that should save what we're doing there. Oh yes, we talked about the split track audio, but the last thing we want to talk about is that dreaded underwater sound. So if you go and you play back your audio, all right, you're listening to, I should pause because I didn't start right. And it sounds like it's underwater. It's a hard thing to describe. I unfortunately don't have any audio that I can show you where it sounds really like that. But if you had too much background sound, there were too much noise that you were removing, and then you went to try and noise remove everything, or noise remove from the whole track, what it can sometimes do is end up sounding echoey. It'll sound super over-processed. That's what's happening, is it's over-editing the audio. It has this, like, murky underwater sound. You'll know it when you hear it. And that just means you're going to have to probably do some re-recording. There is too much sound in the background. See if you can minimize some of it. See how much of it you can remove. And then you shouldn't have that underwater sound when you go to do it again. The less sound you have when you record, the better. And I know there's some things you can't take out, like the fan in the background or the air conditioner or something like that. But if you're able to turn it out or wait till a better time to record so that you didn't have that background sound, it might help you out there. All right, so we're going to go to the last section then, which is how to actually do your editing. So we're going to go over how to cut your audio, the importance of using silence, so not to take out every silence, how to finish your Podfic, because there's a little bit we can do to make it sound super clean, and then how to export your Podfic. So to do that, we're going to go back to that little bit that I had with Sunfreckles' hug prompt here, because I've got some mistakes that I can edit out. So I've just gone back to the beginning. We'll go over a recap of how to do that noise removal, because I'm going to do that on that. So I've clicked and dragged to select my noise print there. Effect, noise removal, get noise profile, and then I'm going to double click on the whole thing. Effect, noise removal again, and hit OK at the bottom because we've got remove selected there. I'm just going to wait a second. It's going to take a little longer because the clip is longer. You might be waiting a few minutes there if you have something that's very long that you're removing all the noise from. But you notice we've got that missing. Things look good. All right. So we're going to go ahead and find a place that I made a mistake, which I think is in the first part here. Yes, we went over it. So we're going to click to where we want to start editing. And hit play. Comfer has excellent peripheral vision. He needs it. When he's driving, he has a Nope. So this is the part where I made this mistake. This part is still okay. He needs it. That part was all right. But this is the part that I want to take out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click here. I'm going to click and drag when it wants to do it, using the hand to where I want it to come in again. So this part here, this waveform, I know this is the part where I want to hear what I'm saying again. And I've removed probably just a little bit of space here. So before I bring in the next part, I want to leave that same little bit of space so I don't mess with the time too much. So once I've got that selected there, I'm going to hit delete, and it's just going to get rid of that there. So if we play it back, Comfer has excellent peripheral vision. He needs it. When he's driving, he has a strict no distractions policy. So now it sounds like I didn't make a mistake at all. And so that is how you want to do the editing for your whole fix. You're going to go through and you're going to take out all of the spots where you flubbed, all of the spots where you paused for a really long time. That's what you're going to all edit out. The other thing that might happen is maybe you tried to add a dramatic pause and it went on a little longer. When you're listening to it back, you're like, this just sounds like a really long pause and doesn't do anything. And I want to delete some of it. So you might delete a little bit of that extra space as well. Try not to overdo it because those dramatic pauses really sell it. But sometimes you might want to edit some of that out. The other thing you have to be careful for when you're doing those edits is to make sure that you don't cut on a breath. So I don't think I had any in this little clip that I did, but let's say we're selecting this and this is the section that I want to delete. If I go and I delete it and I hear all of a sudden, that's a little bit more of a gasp than a breath, but you get a sharp noise where you've cut halfway through a breath coming in. You don't want to try and avoid that. So if you deleted this section and let's say you played it back and you heard that noise, you just hit Control Z or you go to Edit, Undo, Delete. Or Edit, Undo there. I think it's Command Z on a Mac. I'm not sure what the shortcut is on a Mac, but the edit menu at the top will tell you there. And then move this around and make it a little shorter. See if you can try and avoid wherever that breath is in here. So that's something else to watch when you're doing your editing, is not to cut on a breath because it's going to sound really jarring. But if you've left your pauses correctly, lots of space in between everything, you shouldn't have too many issues of having to cut too close to your audio and it being too difficult to do those cuts. The last thing that you're going to do, though, now that we've gone through the whole thing, our whole Podfic, we've edited out all our mistakes, it sounds amazing, we've gone File, Save Project to make sure that we didn't lose any of those fantastic edits that we did, is we want to finish it up. So our intro sounds great, we left some space, we've done our recording, we're ready to finish it. So in order to make it sound really good when it plays back, and this is something you're barely going to notice because everything that you listen to probably does this, is you're going to do a fade out and a fade in at the beginning. So if you haven't deleted your noise print right at the top, you can go and select that and delete it. I tend to leave a little bit extra space at the beginning before I start listening, and you're going to see why in a second. So don't go right to where you start talking, but delete most of that noise print. We don't need it anymore. We're done our editing. And you're going to select just the first part of your Podfic right here. So what we're going to do is a fade in. So without it, you might notice like a click or a computer sound or something when you were to listen to something that isn't faded in at the beginning. It's not a big deal if you forget to do it. Most people are used to it happening once in a while when they're listening to, say, like a YouTube video or something. But doing the little fade in at the beginning just makes it sound really natural when you start listening to something in your headphones. You won't even notice the switch. So to do that, we've selected our first little bit. We're going to go to Effect, and we're going to click Fade In. So you won't even notice a difference here, but all it's done is fade in the audio from 0, so it's going to make it a little bit smoother, but you can't even see it in the waveform. Same thing goes for the end. We can delete some of that extra space at the end, because we're not going to need it, but we've left a little bit of a pause. We're going to select right to the end, Effect, and this time we're going to click Fade Out, because we want it to go out in the audio. And that just makes it really seamless between the things that you're, the person who's listening to your Podfic. It makes it really nice and smooth between what they're jumping between. So it's a nice thing you can do for them. You probably won't notice too much of a difference yourself, but it really helps when you're switching between tracks. So that's the bit that we're going to do to finish your Podfic, and once all that done, we're ready to export it. So exporting is what's going to be done in order to export it to an MP3 or a WAV or whatever format it is that you want to upload it to the internet. For the most part with Podfics I've seen is MP3. Most people seem to like that. It's a really compressed format, so it makes it really easy to upload and download, and that's kind of what we want out of Podfic. Doesn't do the best for your audio quality. Waves tend to sound a little bit better if we're really going for the way things sound, but MP3 is a little bit easier to share. So to do that, we're going to go to File at the top, and we're going to go here to Export. So go ahead and click on Export. You've figured out where we want to save it on our computer. And here by default, you see I save things as WAV first. So when I'm doing backups of things, I like to save a WAV copy so that when I'm listening to it on my computer, I don't have to send it anywhere. I can listen to that nice high quality audio that I like to listen to. But we're going to export this to other people. So we're going to choose MP3 files right there. And we can make it the same title. So A Leaping Hug with Corfair, that's fine. We're going to hit Save. So here's the section here where you get to put in some metadata. So metadata is when you're listening to something, it tells you who the artist is, it tells you what the album is. That's all the little metadata things that go with it. For the most part, you can also do this in iTunes. It's the same way that you would add other metadata that isn't here in this list from Audacity, or you want to add cover art. You can do that in iTunes, and I can do a different tutorial on how to do that if anybody doesn't know how. But we can add some of that added metadata right now in Audacity. So let's say the artist name, in this case, would be the person who wrote it. You can go two ways. You can either put your name in for the artist name, or you can do the author who wrote it. I tend to like to put the author who wrote it in and then list myself as a supporting artist when I do it in iTunes. So for here, I'm going to write my son Freckle, who is the person who wrote the little drabble bit that I was reading. This was, I think we called it a leaping hug with Corfair, because that was the hug prompt. The album title, I usually just type the same thing unless it's part of a series. So, for example, the podfic that I started doing at the beginning was the Witch Boy series by To the Will of the People. So that has a bunch of fics in a series that are all listed individually with different titles. So I'll use the album title to put in the series name instead so it gathers them all together, and list the track title just as the name of the one particular fic in that series that I'm reading. In this case, there's just the one chapter, so we just do one, but you could do 2 or 3 or 4 if you're doing multiple chapters in a fic. The year doesn't matter so much. Genre, I usually try to put podfic in, even though it's not a real category that anything recognizes. But those are the blanks that we've got there. And then we can click OK. So it's going to export the file. It might take a little while if you've got something a little longer. But once it's exported there, you can go and see in your File Explorer that you should have it saved to your computer. So just right there we go. We've got the MP3 on our desktop there, and if you double click on it, it should open in whatever your audio player of choice is. I think mine's going to open in iTunes. It might take a little while. Oh, no, Windows Media Player by default. You're listening to a So it started playing back there. And so that's it, basically. That's how to edit. That's how to export it. That's how to finish it. And so at the end of this, you should be an expert on how to do some basic recording in Audacity. You might have to go back and watch the different sections over a few times. I know I went over this pretty fast, but I didn't want to make it too long. But that is your basics. I'm thinking about doing a part 2 with doing some audio layering in case you did want to add music at the beginning, or for your page breaks. I like adding music for my page breaks. Or if you wanted to do any sort of sound effects or anything like that. I was going to do an Audacity 102 for anybody who wanted to do a little bit more complex. But if this is just, you want to record a podfic, it's your first time, don't want to do anything fancy, this is just the basics of absolutely what you got to do to make it sound good. If you have any questions, though, you can find me on Archive of Our Own at the username The Lord of La Mancha, although it's a little bit hard to talk on AO3. So if you want to send me a message on Tumblr instead, you can find me at Fish and Chips and Vinegar. There's lots of other people on Tumblr as well who do great podfics, who I'm sure would also be able to help you and answer your questions. And if you are doing Les Mis Podfic Week, I look forward to hearing what you do. If this tutorial helped you, tag me in it, please, because I want to hear the amazing podfics that you guys do. And good luck and record good audio. Thanks so much.